Hello again, and welcome back to Rudy's 1/6 World for the next installment in our ongoing Retrospective Showcase series, where we look at some older figures in my collection. And today, we'll actually be giving a little bit of love to DC for once, and I'm going to be reviewing the Ganghood PMC Team Leader 6-scale figure, which was basically a version of Rick Flag from the first Suicide Squad. It was produced by Ganghood with a sculpt from 11, who has actually done some really solid work. So, a little background before we jump into the figure itself. If you've followed my channel for a little bit, you know I'm big into the MCU line. That's been my primary focus for some time now. But there was a time where it was both Marvel and DC, because as a comic book fan, I was loving having both universes represented theatrically. And I really did like the darker tone the DC movies had with Man of Steel, the Snyder cut of BVS, the original Wonder Woman, and yes, even the original Suicide Squad. While I didn't think that movie was on par with the ones that preceded it, I did find it to be entertaining, and I thought it nicely opened up another corner of the DCEU. Plus, seeing Harley Quinn in live action for the first time was a huge bonus for those of us that really fell in love with the character from the animated series. So, I do have a bunch of figures from the line that Hot Toys produced, and when this figure was offered, I couldn't pass on adding a Rick Flag to the collection. I really did like his character, and in a movie like this, I think Joel Kinnaman did a great job bringing Rick Flag to life. And actually, I think this might have been the last DC figure I picked up because, again, full disclosure, when the theatrical cut of the Justice League came out, I think that was the first time I came out of a movie completely disappointed. So much so that Hot Toys had the tactical suit Batman up for pre-order. I had it ordered, and I actually canceled it. Don't hate me for saying that, but I just hated the tonal shift and what they did to the characters in that one. But at least I had a few movies early on that I liked. So let's start by taking a look at what we're getting here as an overall package, and he does feel like a loaded release, and I think he borrows heavily from military style figures, which, given that he's a soldier, makes perfect sense. So you get some gear that attaches to his vest, like the radio, an additional pack, some additional comm gear, and patches, and then you get his main rifle and a sidearm, although the rifle is disassembled, which, if you've collected military figures in the past, is pretty much the norm. Now granted, that's to give you flexibility in setting up the rifle. Here, if you want to recreate the look from the movie, there really is only one way to set it up. Now, he doesn't have a stand, and he doesn't include additional hands, which is a little surprising even for third party. But let's take a closer look at the accessories, and let's start with the weapons and with his sidearm, which is actually a really nicely detailed piece. It looks almost like a Glock, and the removable clips are nicely detailed as well. The gun itself feels like it does have a little heft to it as well, and there is some nice detail work on the piece, including some text, although it's not really legible, but it does make it feel much more realistic. Next up, his primary weapon, which is a nicely painted HK AR style rifle. It has a very unique color scheme with some camo along the barrel and a dark tan stock that it is functional. Now, if you are a military figure collector like I mentioned before, the way this comes should not be a surprise, as all the attachments are actually separate pieces, including rail attachments that have to be added on the rifle itself to get the other attachments on. So I did have to use some small glue dots to get the rails attached, and then I added in all the pieces. And it really feels like Ganghood probably used pieces from other brands, because the rifle and all the attachments have so much detail on them, including the two scopes, the flashlight, and the laser designator. And of course, he comes with 5 additional mags that can be placed on the figure's kit. Now, like I mentioned before, typically you'd have that flexibility with how you load this up, but here I did want to go for screen accuracy, so I used screenshots from the movie to get everything in the right spot, and fully assembled, the piece looks incredible. And it just feels very high-end, and the only comparison I can make is to those Soldier Story, Damn Toys, or Easy and Simple weapons, which if you ever get a chance to have them, you'll know they are some of the best 6-scale weapons in the game. Besides that, you also get a knife in a plastic sheath that can affix to this vest, and it does look nice with the detail on the blade, including the knife edge and the tan handle, so nice accessory here. Now, as moving away from weapons, you also get a radio that also has some great detail work with text on the screen, and you get that interesting earpiece, which comes with a connector for the harness and a cable that connects back to the cable. But the highlight here that I really love is the detail work and the uniqueness of that clear plastic earpiece. And once you put it on the figure, it really does look amazing. Other piece of kit you get is just a standard pack that comes with a clip to connect to the back of his rig. And it's a nice piece and does add a little something extra to the figure, and it has some nice details with the metal buckles and zippers. And then you do get sunglasses, which seems to be a pretty standard piece these days with some of the figures, at least the ones I've looked at recently. But these are great. The lens is a little bit see-through, so it looks good on the figure. And nicely and interestingly enough, you do get the Oakley symbol on the side. So it feels like they put a lot of great detail work on this to add to the realism as well. Final accessories are the patches for his chest rig, which include the US flag and the flag name tag. And then you get these strips of tape, which you sometimes use to connect some pieces to the kit, but I didn't find it necessary here. So overall, a nice setup. So now let's look at the figure, and we'll start with the sculpt. And I think it turned out really well, especially for third party. As I mentioned at the start, the sculpt was from 11, and he has produced some really good work in the past, and I think this is another really solid effort. The eyes look great and lifelike, which always helps with the realism. And there's a lot of additional great detail and paintwork on the sculpt with the wrinkles, the facial features, including his mustache and beard. So I think it looks like a really close likeness to Joel Kinnaman. Although, I will say, I think the strength of the likeness definitely depends on the angle that you see him from. I will say, though, when you add in the sunglasses, the likeness goes from pretty close to, at least I think, almost perfect. So to me, that tells me with some of these figures that the likeness issues are usually related to the eyes. And that's where a lot of the sculpts fail. Having said that, he really only wears the shades during the start of the movie, so not sure that I'll want him wearing them permanently on the display. Now, looking at the rest of the figure, it's a great recreation of Flag from that first movie with the tan shirt and the very unique chest rig with the leather-like shoulder pieces. And it does have the connections for modular elements, so it looks great, but the other highlight is the belt he comes with, which includes rubber-like holsters for his Glock, for the extra pistol ammo. He has 2 slots for extra rifle mags, and he does come with a slot for the radio as well. And a big positive here, we as the end user don't actually have to get all these in place. Now, I love loading up military figures. That's part of the appeal of them. And adding all the kit, but it does help to just have these pre-assembled, and it does save some frustration. Overall, it looks great, and the gray pants too, which are very unique in the movie, are really nicely recreated here with the nice, unique knee pads, and they do include functioning tourniquet straps. So overall, it just continues to lend that feel to the figure that, however Ganghood chose to produce this, a lot of the clothing and accessories were definitely either taken from military figures or at least based on them. And it makes sense, right, just given how you would pose this character. Only negative I will say about the uniform is that the shirt is a little bit thick, and while the figure overall has great posability with double jointed elbows, the shirt does get in the way when you are trying to pose him in certain ways. For example, I tried to get him in a standing pose with his gun straight out, and the problem I found was that the shirt was so thick at the shoulders that the arms would just bounce back. Is it a deal breaker? Not at all. But it's just something to be aware of, especially when you're trying to pose him up. Other than that, though, I really think he turned out great. He just looks amazing. The rifle, and once he's fully kit up with the earpiece, he really does stand out. Like I said, the nice thing is that if you don't have DC figures and you just want a unique military style figure, this guy will fit in nicely with that kind of a collection. So if you just want like they describe him, a PMC team leader, I think you can put him in that display and he would look fine. For me, though, he'll definitely live in the DC shelves, and I think he turned out great for a figure Hot Toys clearly wasn't interested in making. And I think he stands well with the Hot Toys offerings from that first movie. I'm also really glad to have him in this version. I know he was still in that sequel movie, in the James Gunn Suicide Squad. I wasn't crazy about the way the character appeared in that one. Also, as an aside, I think they did him dirty in that sequel. Spoilers ahead. If you're still with me, I'm just going to go into them now. I think James Gunn gave him as heroic a death as a character like Flag should have had, standing up for what was right. Although it does kind of go against Flag's more matter-of-fact attitude in that first movie, especially when Waller kills her staff. But anyway, I just hated that they killed him since I really liked the character. Probably partly why I haven't watched Peacemaker on HBO Max. Don't know that I can root for the guy that took him out. Anyway, this has been, as I mentioned, the last DC figure I picked up for a while. Like I said, I was just disappointed with some of the subsequent DC movies that I just felt very comfortable ending my collection here with Flag, being that last representative character of the Snyderverse. And I honestly feel like I went out on a high note here. Again, just visually, there's a lot of appeal to this figure. And loaded up for battle, he just looks great. It's a really fun figure to pose and to add to that collection. And he does stand apart, I think, from other military style figures. I feel like he's kit up in a way where he's more of a quick response force or quick reaction force type, since he doesn't have all that extra gear with him. So that does set them apart a little bit. So it's great to have some of these DC characters in the collection. I'll be honest, I never thought I'd get the chance to own a Rick Flag, so glad I was proven wrong here. And look, I'm not totally out of the DC game. I do have the Batman from the Pattinson movie on order, as well as the Jazzing 22 Batmobile, and I am going to pick up an 89 Batmobile as well. Not sure if it'll be the Hot Toys or the Jazzing version, but those stand on their own apart from the Snyderverse. So that was a quick look at Rick Flag from the Suicide Squad. Let me know your thoughts, and sorry if this seemed more like a DC rant. I really could make a series of videos on my thoughts on what's going on with that particular brand, but I won't. Let me know your thoughts, and as always, thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying the content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next one.